Hi everybody, welcome. I'm Dr. Liu. I'm the chair of the English department, and I'm glad to welcome you all to, unfortunately, our first and only panel of this year, our Eastern English at Work alumni panel. We'd like to try and have at least 2 of these a year, but things happened, as they will, so this year we only have the one. But I think it's going to be a great one, and I'm glad you're all here for it. What's going to happen is I'm going to introduce our panelists, and then I have a bunch of questions to ask them. We'll do that kind of Q&A with me leading it for about 45 minutes, and then the last 15 minutes we'll open it up to you all, and if you have any questions for our panel. Before the question and answer starts, a little bit of an introduction to each of our panelists. Starting at my far right, we have Korey Lewis. Korey received his BA in English from Eastern in 2013. After an internship and subsequent part-time role in 2012, he became the morning show producer at Fox 61. In 2017, he became a control account manager at Pratt & Whitney. Now there's a gap in time in between there, and we'll learn more about that later. And I meant to tell you too beforehand. I'm going to tell you a little bit about them, but I'm leaving out some gaps because I don't want there to be any spoilers. We're looking at the interesting journey some English majors have had to their current careers. So going back to Korey, so he became a control account manager at Pratt & Whitney in 2017. While at Pratt & Whitney, he's earned his Master of Business Administration from UConn with a dual concentration in international business and management. Next is Courtney B Docks. Courtney graduated from Eastern in 2010 with her bachelor's degree in English and secondary education. While at Eastern, she was a 4-year member of the women's lacrosse team and the recipient of the 2009-2010 Bonnie J. Edmondson Female Sportsperson of the Year Award. She was also an active member of both the Education and National Leadership Honor Societies. After graduating, Courtney taught high school in Connecticut and then on the Big Island of Hawaii. She currently resides in Denver, Colorado. She came all the way here just for this panel. No, she had other reasons to be here too, but we still are very happy that she's here. And she is in Denver, Colorado, as I said, and she's working for Visa Incorporated, as in Visa credit cards, right? All right, and next, Taylor Hammond graduated from Eastern magna cum laude in 2013 with a degree in English and secondary education. She went on to earn a master's in organizational management in 2017, while also working full-time as the assistant director of undergraduate admissions, where? Here at Eastern. She also works as an adjunct faculty lecturer in the business administration department at Eastern, teaching a variety of business management courses. And then last but not least, Amanda Topping graduated in 2010 with a bachelor's in English and a minor in writing. In 2014, she received an MA in English from Worcester State University, where she completed a thesis on young adult fiction dystopias. While at Worcester State, she worked in an assistantship program as copy chief for the university's Worcester Spy online magazine. Currently, she's working at General Dynamics Electric Boat as I was almost Canadian there for a minute, Electric Boat, as a technical writer for the Columbia-class Fleet Ballistic Missile Submarine. Say that 4 times fast. All right. So that's our panelists. Please welcome them. All right, so as I said, we've been promoting this panel as being about success in unexpected career paths. I was going to say 3 of the 4 of you have wound up in careers that most people would not immediately envision for English majors, but Amanda says even hers, as a technical writer, not that many people that she works with in tech writing were English majors. But all of them, their paths to where they are now was not necessarily very direct or conventional. So to start off, I'd like each of you, and we'll start at that end and work this way, sure. Each of you to describe your path since graduation from Eastern. What were the steps that got you from graduation today to where you are now, and were there any key moments that wound up directing you toward where you are now? Starting with Korey.
Sure. Hey guys, thanks for joining us. And again, I'm Corey Lewis. So I graduated in 2013 from Eastern, obviously, and I had an internship while I was here at Fox, Connecticut, which would eventually turn into a full-time role as a producer there. I was like, all right, I've got an English degree, I can do copy, I can do editing, so I'm gonna go into news. I had a passion for news, despite what we hear nowadays. And while I was there, I really enjoyed what news could be. I enjoyed applying what I had learned at school, but I don't think it was what I thought it was. While I was there, it became a lot of priority on talking about entertainment, did a lot of Justin Bieber pieces at the time, back then, and decided, all right, I need to shake things up. This isn't what I thought it was. So I started exploring what my options were, and I know maybe many of you guys feel the same way, that maybe you feel limited with the scope of your degree, but I explored my options, and I actually had networked. I spoke with a friend who was in engineering in Connecticut, we have a big market for that. And so I actually got a job working for Quest Global, which is an outsourcing for engineering. They support Pratt & Whitney, Sikorsky, a couple other big engineering firms. So while I was there, I actually started trying to apply some of the principles I had gained while I was at school or from school, mainly like a creative approach to problems. One of the things that's great about our backgrounds is that we're not black and white. You know, you get assignments, and the ability to do well in a class or on an essay is up to your ability to use your rhetoric and your persuasive arguments and so on. So I did that while I was at Quest. And it was to much success. I was able to actually create a position that didn't exist. I made the case for it. I pitched it to leadership through a presentation, persuaded them, and I became the cost savings program manager at Quest, representing our initiative to reduce costs for Pratt & Whitney. Pratt & Whitney saw that. They offered me a job, and I took that in 2017. And while I've been there, I've been a control account manager, so I'm actually on the F-135 program. That's it's actually like it's the most expensive weapons program in human history. So it's pretty intense stuff. And there I'm actually helping negotiate contracts with the government, Department of Defense, managing the budget cost on our repairs, which is our aftermarket, and still trying to develop positions for myself while I'm there.
Can I ask a quick follow-up, Korey? I know you earned your MBA while at Pratt & Whitney. Did they help pay for your MBA?
Yep, definitely can recommend UTC if you're looking to not have to pay out of pocket. They have a scholarship program. If you're an employee at UTC, at Pratt & Whitney is a subsidy of UTC. They will 100% cover your education if you want to explore that, which was awesome. I didn't even have to see any of the checks, just right as they went. So yeah.
Great. All right, next is Courtney.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Courtney B Docks. Soon to be someone else, because I'm getting married. So this is my last, this is the last thing I get to do as Courtney B Docks, so I'm so happy to be here. I love Eastern. I wouldn't have come from Colorado to be here today. So I work for Visa. I started my career as a high school English teacher. Anybody here interested in teaching as an English major? Okay, great, couple people. Good, wonderful. It's a wonderful career path. When I was a teacher, I loved everything about teaching. I had started a master's program. I was actually going to Southern, and I had to complete a professional writing internship. And I think that was probably the biggest pivotal point of my career. I worked as, I was thinking about going into something else other than teaching. So I'd received advice, focus on a skill set. And so I had thought that my skill set was writing, since I was an English major. But lo and behold, it was always teaching. And writing was always just a passion that I really loved. So in that internship, I worked for Priceline.com. I was Kelly Coco and Will Shatner for the summer on their social media, which was so much fun. I got to write about vacations and be sarcastic. So it was really wonderful. And so at Priceline, I learned of their learning and development department and how there's teaching in this corporate world. And so it was amazing. I ended up going back, not getting a full-time job at Priceline, but focusing on my thesis. And I then became training software in hospitals, so electronic medical record systems. So when you go to the doctor now, they put everything into a system. So I trained people how to use those. And so then I started this whole career path, and which led me to building curriculums for startups. So lots of writing, lots of teaching. It's called instructional design. We work with technical writers that are wonderful, like Amanda. She was in my thesis class. I haven't seen her in 10 years, so I'm so happy to see you. And so it's been a whirlwind of experiences. I've met wonderful, wonderful people, all doing what I love, teaching and writing. And so I currently work at Visa after traveling, and I love Visa. I oversee their training for their global data products at Visa. And so lots of traveling, lots of training on different reports, and what you're doing as a card holder. So it's a really wonderful company. I'm really happy to be there.
All right. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Taylor Hammond. I work in the admissions office here at Eastern. I also graduated in 2013 as well from Eastern. I grew up in the Danbury area of Connecticut and have since come to Eastern in 2009, and I guess I'm just never leaving. And I'm pretty okay with that. So when I was a student here at Eastern, I was really involved in a lot of different areas. So I was involved with orientation and student activities. I got to know a lot of people on campus, not only in my classes, getting to know my faculty, but also getting to know other staff on campus. And so over the course of my years, I kept those relationships and those connections pretty close. And my director, who also happened to have recruited me from Danbury High School when I was in high school, came to me when I was graduating and was like, hey, what are you doing? What's your plan? And I had been working in schools doing the secondary education program and found relatively quickly that teaching in secondary schools wasn't for me. And so in working with high school seniors, you probably all remember what you were like your second semester of senior year of high school in your English classes. It's the only class required for graduation. That was like baptism by fire for me. And so in going through that process, I was like, maybe teaching is not my passion as much as I had thought. And so my director now had come to me then and was like, hey, what are your plans? And I said, I don't think I want to teach. And it was like a total blow. This was my plan my whole life, to become a high school English teacher. And then suddenly I wasn't. And I kind of panicked. And when he asked me if I wanted to try out college admissions, I was like, you know what? Let's try it. And I absolutely love it. I do a lot of different things in my job. I've gone from being an admissions counselor to an assistant director. I do our international recruitment. So the opportunities that I've been given throughout the years here at Eastern are immense. I've really worked my way up in our office, and I think the very best thing that I did right from the start in coming to Eastern was always saying yes to different opportunities, both as an undergraduate student, but then also in my career. So it's been quite an interesting journey. I have gone from recruiting our domestic students and helping with a lot of the writing and the technical pieces of the admissions office and building our communication flow to traveling and getting to meet students all around the world. So it's been pretty fun.
Hi, I'm Amanda. I went to Eastern in 2006, 2010 with Courtney, and I can relate a lot to what Taylor was saying about teaching. I also, first let me start actually back at ECSU. I worked in the Office of Housing and Administration as well, so I kind of have a feel for maybe your job style a little bit. So when I left Eastern, I didn't really know how to break into the workforce. And honestly, I don't know how many of other of you have felt this way, but I didn't really feel comfortable doing that yet. So I went back into more school. I went to Worcester State University, and the reason I chose that school was because, school was not really that affordable for me at that time. And this was a school that was within my price range. And B, my brother and my boyfriend, now husband at that time, went to school at WPI. So I was feeling a little lost, a little uncomfortable, and that was my safety net. So it's okay to have a safety net as long as you have a good plan for it. I merged into Worcester State University for my graduate school. I did 2 years of student teaching and realized that teaching was not for me. It's not for everyone. And I think I had the idea to do teaching because it was hard for me to know what else was out there in terms of like what you could do with your English major once you had it. I knew that I liked writing, like Courtney said. I knew I liked reading. I just didn't know how to implement it in my life. So while I was at Worcester State, when I realized that teaching was not for me, I called my mom and I was like, hey mom, would you be really upset if I left this right now? I'm 2 years in. And she was like, no, it's not for you, it's not for you. So I left and I went into a master's in English, same school. So it was a nice, easy transition, and the teachers were very helpful. And I merged also into a assistantship program, and that assistantship program paid for those 2 years. I did have to take out additional loans for housing, but it was all worthwhile experience. I came out of it with a good master's degree, a lot of experience helping students from a more professional level, which felt more like coworkers rather than teaching high school, which is a little different. And then after that, I got a job at Business and Legal Resources, which is out of Old Saybrook. It's a business-to-business organization, so they help other businesses understand regulations like from OSHA and EPA and HR laws, and I worked in the environmental/safety department. So I started off as an editor, and I left as a senior editor. So I had progressed to the point where I felt like my time there had been extended, and I moved on to something I was more passionate about, which is technology. And I found a career in electric boat, where I currently work as a technical writer, and that is where my passion stands right now.
So I'm going to kind of combine the next two questions that I had prepared for you guys, since now that we've gotten a sense of your career path to where you are now, can you tell us a little bit more about your job, what your primary responsibilities are, what you do on a typical day, and how do you see yourself using what you learned as an English major in that work? And I'm going to start this time with, I don't want to start with the same person every time, so I'm going to start this time with Courtney.
Okay, yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, I oversee a training program of our global data products at Visa. I would say that as an English major, I just miss all the books that we read in college. But I think one of the biggest things that I learned was how to analyze, right, as an English major. I remember sitting in class and we're discussing, a character. The character's shirt is blue. And then all the reasons why, how blue what's symbolic about blue. And in the real world now, sometimes the shirt is just blue. and you don't need to analyze why the shirt is blue. And so, but those analytical skills that you learn as an English major that was probably the biggest ribbon that I learned from Eastern, especially with all these amazing professors. And so I work now in data as an English major. And so you're analyzing ways that you can look at data different ways, explaining it so it's absorbed by anybody, right? And so I would say the biggest piece of advice that I've learned is just know that the shirt can just be blue. And then in some situations, there are ways that you can approach analyzing those things in your day-to-day. So,
How does the data play into the training?
yeah, sure. So my job, the data. So I train on a reporting tool, and so it's how do you what story are you trying to tell? So essentially, you are a storyteller. A lot of the people that we train are They could be executives, they could be in operations, they could be different parts of the business, but they're still trying to tell the story to someone else. So how do you teach somebody to tell the story, giving that full picture about the data? And so, so there's storytelling as well. There's just so many skills as English majors that you can use. And I think the analytical skills, the storytelling, being organized, communicating effectively, those are all skills that you use as English major. Being able to write an email, getting your point across without writing a dissertation for your email is just all things that you have skill. You're at the top. You're ahead of many people that you'll be working with, I think, in the industry. And then when you're an English major, sometimes people ask you to write emails for them or edit their emails. And so they think that you're a great speller. So make sure that you know how to spell, because as soon as you say you're an English major, they think that you're an amazing speller. So. But in all seriousness, there's many skills that you're acquiring as English majors that are going to set you far from the rest of your colleagues.
Thanks, Courtney. I'm going to go back to Korey now, because you brought up the idea of storytelling, and I know Korey has something to say about that. So, Korey, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's everything you just said is kind of spot on with how I feel in the workplace. So I'm in project management. I'm talking finance, budget, schedule for Department of Defense, and all that to say I'm still telling stories to someone and compelling narratives to try to get my resources to feel motivated. So as a leader in my area, my task is to be a kind of a manager of meaning, and the way I do that is through using rhetoric and narratives to try to show the value of what we're doing. So, and if you guys are working now, or when you do work, some of the tasks you're going to do, you're not necessarily going to feel super passionate about them, okay? But that's okay, and because you're working towards something else. And more importantly, is even those tasks have a function and purpose to the success of an organization or enterprise, and I consider it my job to communicate that value every time I give an assignment to someone in my group. And I do that through narrative and again, storytelling in that way. And even when I'm meeting with, an admiral in the military now, and they're saying, why do I need to pay for this and the tax dollars, et cetera, I'm trying to build that story as to why there's value here in creating that dynamic for them. So that's a big piece of what I think I really gained through my English experience and background. And the other thing is soft skills. So right now, I think it was 65% of students who are in grade school are actually learning for jobs that don't exist yet, right? Which means that what's really in demand right now are these soft skills, emotional intelligence, effective communication. And on paper, every job I've had, including the news writing and producing job to what I'm doing now, I have not technically been qualified for based on what the requirements were, right? Whether it be the actual degree background or the experience. But what I have lacked on that technical form, I have made up for in the soft skills and effective interviewing, that I gained that confidence and that ability to speak articulately to why I'm qualified and why I can transform organizations. And that creative critical thinking that you were also touching on. I can't stress enough how rare it is in corporate America to see people with these high EQs. A lot of high IQs. EQs are a different story, and you guys are definitely in an advantageous point compared to a lot of other people that you're going to be competing with for jobs.
Thanks, Korey. Let's go to Amanda now.
Oh, okay. So my typical day, and what was the combined question?
And how do you see yourself using?
How do I see myself using
what
it?
you learned at Eastern in your English major?
So how I typically see myself using, it's funny because like we were saying, my job actually doesn't have a whole lot of English majors. So most of the people that I work with have some sort of technical background, like either they worked at some place like Pratt & Whitney and then came to EB, or they're military or they're Navy. And so we all come from a large variety of backgrounds. And because of that, in my singular department, which has very few writers because we're working on one specific class of submarine, which is, by the way, a prototype submarine. It's not out yet. It's set to launch on, I think the first lead patrol is 2031. So we're a ways out, but it sounds far, but it's really not. There are lots of deadlines to meet in that time period. And so the manuals that I work on day to day are technical manuals that cover the systems of the submarine. And these systems are what the sailors will operate. So what I have to do is I have to research, I have to write, I have to understand all of the materials that I'm looking at, whether it's a hydraulic electrical fluid diagram, whether it's a construction of the ship, whether it's a vendor manual, whether it's everything from engine parts to, you have to think of like your house and all the parts that go into that, like the plumbing, all of the air supply, things like that. So I have to learn and understand all of those things in order to communicate with the engineers. And that sounds pretty difficult, but when there's people there to help you out, that's where you shine as an English major, because your communication skills are going to be so strong if you go into the tech field, because there are people who, let's say, don't communicate as well as English majors and might need a little assistance in communicating their ideas. And that's where you come into play as a technical writer. For example, I take a lot of the technical jargon that an engineer might relay to me and boil it down into whole sentences that a sailor would be able to implement on the vessel. So a lot of what I do is not really narrative, but kind of. You can't be as creative as you want to be, but like you said, the blue shirt is blue. It's a lot of that. It's a lot of knowing when to say, when to be succinct, when to be technical, and then how much instruction to give, how much is too much. A lot of it's formulaic too. Understanding the manuals really well from like a template perspective really helps. And so a lot of my skills are in organization. And so a lot of the things that I learned at Eastern, honestly, simplified, organizing your homework, organizing your daily life, those actually really come into play when it becomes time to be in the career path, just in general. But I think even as an English major, you learn how to do that better through sentence structure, through grammar, through doing essays, things that are very regimented, but still there's a little bit of leeway. Another thing that I find too, because I'm singularly the English major in my field, is that I get asked a lot of grammatical questions, and sometimes they're very important to the sentence of the ship. It can change the technical writing completely, putting an and in somewhere where it shouldn't be. There are two ends, okay, the worst one. There are two ands at the end of a list, and you have to tell them, no, it changes the meaning of it. Sometimes those are really important. Knowing those grammatical skills, knowing when to use the right language can really change the manual itself.
And finally, Taylor.
Okay. So I think that something that, just to sort of summarize what all of us has said, because ultimately I'm sort of going to just echo what everyone up here is saying, but I think as English majors, we learn organizational skills, we're storytellers, we're good communicators, both written and orally. And I think that's what you can take into any position. Obviously, I'm working here in the higher education circle or the realm, but three of my colleagues up here are working in corporate America as English majors, not really doing anything specifically directly tied to being what you typically would think of when you think of an English major, right? We're not novelists, we're not writing books. We have one technical writer, but she's technical. And so we learn those organization skills in analyzing and looking at papers and looking outside the box and thinking outside the box. So we're really working on those analytical skills as well. Having that ability to organize and form sentences that make sense is really important. It was mentioned before that I teach business students part-time. Their writing is very different, and they're not taught to write the way that you are. And know that going into the business world, you are going in truly a step ahead because you have a strong command of the language, you know sentence structure, and you're able to voice your thoughts or other thoughts and tell those stories. So that's the first thing, you're organized. You're storytellers because that is your job. That is actually my job every single day, is to convey different stories to different students on why they should consider Eastern. And so, you have to be creative in that sense and be able to look at a set of data or look at something that's in front of you and be able to talk about it with people. And again, whether that's actually writing it or conveying that through a presentation or speaking one-on-one, those are the types of skills that you're learning. And then what was the last thing I said? We're good communicators, and that's really what it is. The irony is not lost on me, but we're good communicators, and I think that that's important. Being able to craft an email is really important. Getting things spelled wrong, there's nothing worse than when definitely is spelled wrong by a student or by a real professional out there in the world. And so it's true that getting tagged with having an English degree, I wrote our acceptance letter. You truly will be writing very, very important things in your jobs in the future, purely because they know that you can write. So make sure that you are representing yourself in Eastern well that way, and write well as well.
Okay, great. I had given them the questions ahead of time so that they'd be prepared, but I'm going to skip down a little bit again. I'm going to start with you, Taylor, on this one, because you talked quite a bit about how you were heavily involved in lots of things at Eastern and making lots of connections. So I want to ask you if you could go back and do anything differently in your time at Eastern, not changing your English major, but if anything else, if you could go back and do differently, what would that be and why?
That's a tough question. I actually started as a communication major and I took 2 classes, and I was like, oh my God, I hate this. And I switched immediately. I had a similar experience to Amanda of like freaking out and calling my mom. And I was like, what am I going to do with my life? And then I realized that I was really passionate about reading, writing, teaching, and working with others. And that's ultimately how I landed on secondary ed. Truthfully, I wouldn't change much. I really enjoyed every single class that I took. I think that I ended up in the right departments in every step of the way. I really feel like I was in the right place at the right time. The only thing that I would probably slightly adjust if I could is studying abroad. If you have the chance to get some sort of experience, either in a faculty-led program, one of our global field courses, or even taking a semester abroad, obviously, asterisk coronavirus right now, but in a typical semester, if you have that opportunity to travel and get that experience, it really is unique and it is life-changing. I didn't start traveling internationally until 2 years ago, and the first place I was sent was China. Eye-opening how different the world is. It's quite empowering, and you learn not only about other cultures and the way things work, but you learn a lot about yourself in doing that. So that's the only thing that I would change, but also I wouldn't change it at the same time, if that makes sense. So.
Okay, Amanda.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I think I did a lot of things that I wanted to do when I was here at Eastern. I gave myself plenty of social time as well as work time. I think you do have to invest in both. If you're sacrificing one or the other, you're not going to do well in life. So I think I spent a pretty well-balanced time of that. I do wish I had spent more time in the literary club, which we published the literary magazine, and I only did that, I think, for the last year that I was at Eastern, maybe a year and a half. And
Now it's called the Creative Writing Club.
Oh, is it? Okay, yeah. Sorry.
That's okay.
But I remember, does Dr. Donahue still?
Yeah.
Yes. So we were in that club, and we had Pulitzer Prize winners come. We had Natasha Trethway come that year. And I think it was really also eye-opening to see, like, kind of, even here, a deeper world that I just wasn't exposed to otherwise. And I still have those memories, and I still cherish them, that I got to experience something that one-on-one I might not experience in any other scenario. So I kind of wish I had spent more years doing that, but I also wasn't aware that it existed. So I think that had a factor in it. But I also did an internship during the summer at Soundings Magazine, and I would highly recommend that you do an internship in anything that you think you're going to do, and even if you don't necessarily do it. Unfortunately, during my internship, the woman who was mentoring me told me not to go into publishing, and I was talking about this last night, and I said, I wish she hadn't said that, because it detoured me, and it made me go to teaching. And I ended up in publishing anyway, and there's really no death to publishing anyway. That we were talking about this, and I said, my husband said, barring the zombie apocalypse, there will always be publishing in some form, and I agreed because there's online publishing now. And I think it was in that weird transition phase when we were coming out of college where it was like not sure where that publishing was
Going
going.
digital.
Yeah, and it was relatively new.
Yeah, it's headed digital.
Yeah, and now there's
Now
lots
it
of
is
social media that you did as well, and I think there's lots of outlets to that, and so I would highly recommend doing an internship, and that's something I don't regret doing.
Okay, great. Korey.
I would allocate less time to the social life. I did not have a shortage of that, and I would have said yes to more on-campus network building types of activities and events and groups. It's clear now how important networking is, and you might not realize it, but you have that network here at Eastern. Join the group, say yes. You will not regret it. The social life is there. It's not going anywhere. And I would also say I would probably have done a little bit more classes around, now in hindsight, business. So there's one of the best classes outside of my English classes that I took was a business information management course that gave me experience into like Microsoft Excel, PowerPoint, and a little bit of a greater depth into those things, which if you go into any sort of corporate business venture, okay, you will absolutely be using those tools all the time. So if you can put that on your resume as, I've taken courses, I have familiarity experiences with that, that's going to be huge. But yeah, definitely the biggest one for me was I regret not doing enough networking and group type clubs and events, for sure.
All right, and Courtney.
So one thing that I do regret, and this is kind of a joke, but not really, I really thought about this a lot, is that I wish I didn't sell my favorite books back. I wish I still had them, because there are some books that we read in some of these classes that I still can't get the editions, and they were probably some of the best. I mean, we had Morrison. I'm seeing some professors in the room. It's so good to see all of you, but so I think that would be the one thing that I would regret. I think too, at what everyone's saying, I think your experience, other than that, by the time at graduation, look back at Eastern and want to come to a panel. Like, I did everything. I made the most of my experience at Eastern, and I don't regret a thing about it. And I'm friends with all of my friends from Eastern, and five out of 6 of my bridesmaids are from Eastern. So build the relationships here, stay in touch with your professors, stay in touch with your mentors. I'm telling you, I would not have flown back from Colorado if I did not love Eastern as much as I do. This is an amazing place, and you have lots of opportunities. So.
Well, thanks. And I just want to second what you said about staying in touch with your professors. I say this all the time to my colleagues. Hey, do you know what so-and-so's up to? And they'll, no. It would be nice. When we do hear from our former students and they tell us what they're up to, we're always thrilled to know. It doesn't have to be something life-shattering. We just like to know what you're up to, what happened to you. Not just that you disappear and then we never know what's going on. So I just wanted to second that. All right, so where do you see your career paths? We only have a little bit of time before I want to open it up. So where do you see your career paths leading you next? Okay, it's that bad interview question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Okay, who hasn't gone first yet? I don't think, Taylor, you have you?
I did this time.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. Amanda, okay, you go first.
Of course. It's really funny. My answer is kind of short. I really like technical writing, and I'm happy to have landed where I am the way that I did. Even if it was like a winding and kind of wayward path, and even if I was very insecure right after Eastern about what I wanted to do, at least I got there. And I got there in the way that suited me best. And I'm happily married, and I have loads of student debt, and I am working to pay it off in a job that I truly enjoy. So I will hope to stay in the technical writing field for as long as I can.
Okay, good. Let's just go down the way.
Perfect. I'm hoping in like the next 5 years or so to have some sort of admissions director position, so being in charge of a recruitment office, either here at Eastern or at another university. So that's kind of what's in my plan.
So you want to stay at admissions,
Yes,
though?
I love admissions. It's great.
Right. Courtney?
In the next 5 years, I just want to make sure that I'm making learning accessible for anybody, especially in corporate. It's untraditional for teaching, but I think it's very important that everybody feels valued, and I hope that in the next 5 years, I'm getting there. I'm in a position where I can make that kind of impact, and I believe I am now. But I think that learning needs to be accessible for everyone, and everyone needs to be able to feel valued. I think that's the most important thing.
Korey?
Yeah, if everyone could actually give me prayer hands, I'm hoping to hear back this week on an opportunity in Norway. You mentioned that earlier, yeah. So I'm hoping for the next 3 years to be an expatriate in Norway as the base engine manager for my program. That would be awesome. I think it'd be a really cool experience. So, guys, please. And in a 5-year scope, if that doesn't pan out, I really want to continue in this industry. I think there's a lot of opportunity here. We're at the ground floor with this, and I love the idea of being here and talking about how something where on paper someone would say that an English major can't be a director of Pratt & Whitney F-135 sustainment. I love proving those people wrong and having those conversations. So I hope to, in the next 5 years, continue to climb that kind of leadership chain in a company like this and represent for everybody.
Great. So I want to open it up now. I've got another microphone, too, so that we can get your questions on the video and so on. So hopefully somebody has some questions for our panel. Hopefully. Oh, Dr. Polly.
Well, if nobody else does, I'll start. First, I wanted to say to Courtney and Amanda, I really think you need to double check your graduation year, because that could not have been 10 years ago.
I think so, yeah.
I feel sure you're misinformed. But no, I wanted to ask all of you, just if you could tell us about a time when some variation on you found yourself learning something in the course of your job that you would not, as an English major, have thought you would have been learning.
Yeah.
And then you also found yourself thinking, so help me, this is actually kind of interesting.
Yeah, happy to. I would never think that I would think data is so. I loved words and letters, not numbers and algorithms. And so being able to explain data the same way that you would explain why Shakespeare is so cool to a 16-year-old is, I think, I'm so lucky. So I definitely think that, being able to translate anything as an English major has been good. Yeah, it's been a great experience.
The same, truthfully. I took over our admissions operations, so I do a lot of what you would say like computer science-y type things in integrating systems and making sure that two different data sets are talking. And I never, ever would have thought that that's something that I would be involved in. And yet I am on the phone with IT people, constantly talking to them about things integrating properly. And so that was interesting and surprising that it was something that I would learn and also enjoy, because I also love the words and the letters.
I want to say pretty much everything in my job is brand new to me, and I love it. I've always loved technical things. My husband and I build computers for fun. So I'm a bit of a closet nerd anyway, but I really actually enjoy looking at hydraulic diagrams and trying to figure out where the valve is. And that sounds very nerdy, but it's kind of like a puzzle. And I just want to figure it out, and by the end of the day, if I haven't, I might stay late. So, and I also I never ever thought that I would be working on such fantastic man-made creations. Like going and experiencing a submarine firsthand while it's being built is just awe-inspiring. I mean, if you get the chance to do that, please do it. It's amazing. It's very thrilling to see what you're doing on paper day to day in the little like white cubicle actually being put in place right next to you. And it's massively impressive, and I feel like I'm actually doing my part in helping to protect the nation. And I'm constantly honored by and impressed by my coworkers who have either served in the Navy or in the Air Force or Army or at the Pentagon. And I think I really value my day-to-day experiences, and learning about submarines is just really cool. So, and not something I ever pictured, you know, back when I was at Eastern working on creative essays that I would be doing. And I think that that's what you should take with you from this panel, is that there are so many different opportunities out there that aren't necessarily teaching, but can be in a way. So
I'll make mine quick. Contracts and proposals, you would think something like that's legalese and all that's black and white. Never is. Awesome thing to be able to get my hands on and experience from that perspective. Didn't see it coming. Not boring, and yeah, I like doing it.
Don't be shy.
I have a question, actually. Maybe does anyone, for the English majors, right? Are you guys have any career thoughts, projections, what you're considering doing once you graduate?
How many of you have no idea what you're going to do?
Yeah, maybe that's the
More
better
hands.
question.
Okay, just know it's going to be okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. There's no
something.
shortage of options for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of the entire point of this panel is you'll find your way, and you might find your way to something that you never thought and then wind up loving it. Like all four of these panelists do. I was telling them earlier, I didn't go back to grad school to get my PhD until I was in my early 30s. And the story of my 20s is all over the place in terms of what I was doing career-wise and job-wise. And I wouldn't go back and do any of it differently, because it was all good experience. But you eventually wind up in a place that's the right place for you, and all the steps along the way are the right place for you at that time to get there. So if you don't, I didn't know what I was going to do with my English degree when I got one as an undergrad either. But I experimented with lots of possibilities, and then I wound up doing this. But yeah. I do have another question. Let's see, where was it? Oh, so what advice, you've got a lot of people in here who said, we have no clue. What advice would you give them about kind of preparing now and getting their head into a place of focus on the future of their career? Who wants to go first? Whoever.
You're probably the expert. Admissions.
All right, I'll start. I think the first thing is to say yes to all the opportunities, to things that we have on our campus here at Eastern. And by that, I mean, just say yes. It doesn't matter if you are tired one day and you don't feel like going, but you've all started and taken the first step of coming to this panel. So get to know people on campus, talk to your faculty members, talk to your professors, and get to know them and keep in touch with them after you graduate. They are thinking of you, and they want to know how you're doing, and they might have connections that might be able to help you get internships or jobs while you're a student here and while you graduate. If you have a position on campus, utilize that and talk to those people, because they want to help you get jobs. So I think that that's the number one thing, is just say yes to all those different opportunities while you're here in college. That is the one thing that I have always done. You know, I've kind of joked about saying, yeah, I have the summer of yes. Have you all heard of, you've probably all read the book Eat, Pray, Love, right? It's kind of like that, but almost in a better way of saying yes, both to social opportunities, because networking, this is where it happens. You get to know people while you're in college, in your classes, in other classes outside of your major, and saying yes to those different opportunities really is that's what got me to Eastern to begin with, and that's what's gotten me to where I am so far. And so don't be afraid to take a risk and dive in and take that job, because you might hate it and realize, okay, this is something I totally don't want to do, or you might end up loving it, and that's kind of what has happened to all of us. So that would be my biggest piece of advice, is take risks and say yes.
Yeah, I would just say don't be intimidated by recruiters or postings. They use big words and they make you feel like even someone with the exact qualifications is going to look at that like, I'm not going to be able to do that. And that's not true. This degree, this background, shy of having to be a surgeon perhaps, you can do the job, believe it or not. And I just would keep impressing upon you guys that if you see something that interests you, go for it. Build the case for yourself as to get that phone call, get that interview, and build the case as to why you can do the job. Every time I have, after I got my business degree, prior to that, I always had to explain, well, what are you doing applying to this job with an English degree? And I always had an answer for them. And I would let them know that, yes, I have a unique background. It's not technical, but that technical thing I can learn. And you can. Whether it's finance, even technical writing, you name it, you can learn these task data. But what's unique about you all is the soft skills that you have that not everyone has and has built. And that's something that takes a lot more background than the technical side, believe it or not. So I would just let you know, be confident when you start looking for jobs and careers.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I would piggyback on what Korey said. I mean, when you first get out of college, I remember especially when I was changing my careers, we would like to hire someone with more experience. That was the rejection email. I have them all. There's many of them, and that's okay. So when you're talking with your employers, believe me, you have experience. Focus on what you can do and not what you can't do. The biggest piece of advice. They ask you, I'm trying to think of an example of a question that I received, but just always focus on what you can do. If you have, especially when I was changing careers, I loved to journal. I like to write bullet journaling. I don't know if any of you have heard of this. I just discovered this actually when I was probably like 2 years after college, and I still have them all, but find your organizational structure. So whether it's journaling, write down all the things that you can do before you go into an interview, because you are your worst critic. Yep. And so, yeah, and you'll get the emails where I like to hire with someone with more experience, and it's okay. It's okay, because you're gonna get the other job.
Amanda, did you want to say anything?
Sure, yeah. I would also piggyback on that and say, make a list of everything you love, not just English, but cooking, baking, horseback riding, whatever it is. Make a huge list of everything you love doing, and then go online and use your resources here, the job centers and things like that, your teachers, and try to research things that everyone can use an English major. We communicate really well, we write really well, we know people really well. I think we have a hidden insight into the mind a little bit. And I think that is really beneficial and not, just teaching, just writing or noveling and stuff like that. You can do that stuff on the side. I actually write a novel on the side, and it's complete, and I submitted it to Macmillan, and I got rejected. But I'm willing to try again. It was a soft rejection. And I would just say, keep all your doors open, investigate, spend time on the Department of Labor website and the Bureau of Labor Statistics site. They will help you, you could type in keywords. I know you guys are all good at Googling, and look for things that are in your hobby range. And you might find stuff that links you well with other jobs that you'd be interested in. And then get out, internship, freelance. That's how I got my job at BLR. I freelanced there first. And then just explore. Get into everything. Don't stop until you have found your passion.
All right, great. We maybe have time for one quick question if anybody has one. Well, if not, I think we'll wrap. It's been a great panel, and we'll wrap it up. And if you could thank our panelists, I'd be very thankful. And thank you all again for coming.